Good afternoon. Welcome back to the channel. This video is not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. Do your own research, make your own decisions. All right, guys. So this video is going to be about ICP. I'm going to address a lot of the fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And I didn't realize that there was a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt. I guess it's all case by case, person to person. But I didn't realize that until I checked Twitter over the last day or two. I just assumed that because one of the more, positive, or one of the more important developments happened this week for ICP that I've seen since I've been in. I just assumed that because of that, there would be some degree of optimism in the space. And I think there is. Again, I think it's all person to person. And I know that everybody falls on different ends of the spectrum. Some people may not care about price at all. Some people are middle of the road. And then other people almost exclusively focus on price. But I do just want to go over everything, look at this from all angles, go over the different options, the different realistic outcomes here, and make your own decisions. Look at this for yourself and make the decisions that you feel like are best for you after taking a comprehensive look at everything. Okay, so you really have three options. You can buy, hold, or sell. You don't have a million options. You have three. And there's not a million different ways that this could play out. There's really only two or three. It goes to zero, it succeeds and goes on to become the main computing platform for Web3. Or I guess you could say another outcome could be it succeeds, but they never really fulfill their long-term vision. But it does succeed and become a part of the new system. So one of those three outcomes. I don't really see a fourth. So there's not a million outcomes and there's not a million different options. So it's actually very limited. So this should be a relatively easy analysis for each person to do and then make whatever decision you feel like is best. And outside of ICP going to zero, which anything could happen, nothing's ever a sure thing. This is not financial advice, but outside of ICP going to zero, all buys that happen after being down 99% will be great buys over the long term. So kind of gets back into your time frame, your conviction, any type of long-term thesis you have, and nothing that anybody says, no amount of bitching about dfinity, about Dominic, about tokenomics, about whatever DAO, about what founders with something application, or about the SNet, no amount of bitching and complaining about that is going to change that reality. All right. So my general goal and objective, now you should look at your own general goal and objective. It doesn't have to be mine. It could be the exact opposite of mine. So some people's general goal and objective might be, I'm going to time the exact bottom and I'm going to sell after, let's say, a 20x. Not necessarily with ICP, just with anything. Best of luck. I mean that sincerely. I don't want people to miss out on anything. Like, I don't want people to fail in this space. I will make counter arguments to certain positions that I feel like are only looking at things from one angle. And I will defend my own reasoning and my own strategies. But you do whatever you feel like is best for you, and I hope it works out. So my goal and my objective was to accumulate as much as possible with the lowest possible average while taking a 0% chance that I'm going to miss a big move. So given that that was my objective, that kind of narrowed down the feasible strategies that I could use. All right. But again, my strategy, my objective, what I'm doing does not have to be what you're doing. So a lot of times in periods of mass fear, it's like most of the things being said, it's like there's a general assumption that there's 0% upside risk with alts, right? Like, so many people have just adopted the mindset that alts are not going to go up until they say they're going to go up. And they will be the ones that say, okay, that's it. That's the bottom. Alts are going to go up now. And that's assuming that, there's a 0% chance of upside risk. Narratives, see, people only talk about downside risk. Like when something's down 90, 95, 98, 99%, it's like when you're looking at the upside and downside risk gets more skewed one way or the other, depending on how far it is up or how far it is down. Narratives given to price action. So earlier, it was FTX and SBF, right? And just so I'm consistent on this, while I did say that's the official narrative, I also said to be very careful with any narratives and stories that are being told about why ICP's price is the way that it is, or why it should be at a certain level as opposed to a different level. And if you go back to 2021, I had the exact same position I had back then, that if this is in fact going to be the open public internet, if it is going to be the main computing platform for Web3, I can think of a lot of reasons why certain institutions would want to destroy the price and convince everybody that it's a scam and get as many people in retail out as possible. That was my position in 2021. It's on tape. You can go listen to it for yourself. And I've kept the same position throughout this entire time. So, but the point that I'm making here is that, so earlier it was FTX, and a lot of the majority of people in the ICP space, that was something that they just openly acknowledged to be the truth. And I do believe that there was some, stuff happening with futures contracts on FTX, and that might have been the exchange where most of the price manipulation was done. But the point that I'm making here is that FTX had zero spot ICP, none. So if that was the exchange that caused the price to do what it did, they did that with zero spot ICP and 100% through derivatives contracts. That's an important point, because now it's like the narrative is changing to it's dfinity and it's the tokenomics, and they have to change this and they need to change that. But the majority of people in the ICP space were acknowledging just a short time ago that the price can be manipulated up, down, every which way with no spot ICP. So back then it was just futures contracts. Now it's the spot ICP. That's the reason why. See, people assign narratives to price action. And while there might be some validity to some of the claims that certain people make about certain things, I can't go through every single claim. I don't have time to investigate every single one of them. But while there might be some validity to some of the things people say, they're assigning a narrative to price action. And if price action was not doing what it's doing, in my personal opinion, 95+% of they need to change this, they need to change that, that's a big problem, this is a problem, it's not going to go up until this happens, and they need to do blah, blah, blah. All of that stuff would just gone if price action was not doing what it's doing right now. I know some people would like to think that they would still raise that as issues if price was performing well, but I personally don't think that we would be hearing almost any of the stuff that we're hearing right now if the price was not where it is. Just my opinion. And y'all are assuming that there is a big assumption here, is that those are the reasons why price is performing poorly. So now it's the spot ICP that's causing ICP's price to perform poorly. But for the prior year, it was futures contracts, right? And for all anybody knows, it's still futures contracts. I mean, you can play on 100-to-1 leverage in this space. I mean, that's a joke. 100-to-1 leverage in this space, and it affects the spot price, not just necessarily with ICP, but with everything. The thought that there would be any real price discovery when you can play on 100-to-1 leverage and that affects the spot price is just a joke, in my opinion. Okay. Also, another thing I hear a lot is that, this alt is holding up better than this altcoin. So buy the one that's holding up better because it's holding up better. I would do the exact opposite, assuming all else being equal, and assuming I had equal or comparable conviction with both assets. And so if the one that's significantly more undervalued and performing worse has the same or comparable fundamentals, and I have equal conviction, I'm buying the undervalued asset. And so if you just look over the last, let's call it 10 months or so, I pretty much pivoted to just accumulating ICP. And it is my max conviction bet. However, it's down 99+%. If ICP, mark my words, and I've said this before, was at $30 right now, and it had never fallen as far as it did, I would not have made the purchases the way that I did. And I would not have allocated this large of a percentage of my portfolio to ICP. But given that it was that far down, I couldn't justify not buying. And I'm still in that exact same boat now. And it'll be the same if it drops 10, 20, 30, 40%. If it drops down to $2, it would be it's the same concept. Okay. As long as nothing fundamentally changes with the technology, or nothing fundamentally changes with the big picture outlook of all of this technology moving forward. Okay, yeah, I would do the exact opposite. Like somebody would look at an alt that's been holding up really well, and it's only down 80% from its all-time high. And they would use that as a reason to buy that asset as opposed to something that's down 98%. But again, all else being equal, I'm going to buy the relatively undervalued asset. Because back to goals and objectives, well, another one of my goals and objectives is return on investment and maximizing return on investment while controlling for risk. Okay, and I'm consistent with this. If you just see what happened with Algorand, I just added more Algorand. Why? Because it was continuing to drop. I'm not going to go buy Stellar after it pumps up and after it starts to stabilize at a higher price if Algorand's continuing to drop and it's relatively undervalued. So I apply the same thing to other assets as well, not just ICP. Had I not pivoted, okay, so let's just rewind back to the end of, let's say, 2022. Had I not pivoted to just exclusively buying ICP, and if I would have instead spread that capital out throughout my top 10 assets, okay, my portfolio would my portfolio would look like it's doing better, as in, profit loss. I would be down less if I would have done that. But I would much rather be in the position that I am right now. Because on my max conviction bet, I have more than I ever thought I could get. And I have it at an average that I never thought I would see as far as my average. Not that I never thought I would see the price. I just never thought I could get my average down as far as it is. And at the end of the day, it goes back to the point up top here. Outside of this asset going to zero, this is going to be a great investment, even though anything could happen. Okay. Just the thought that I would want to buy the asset that's going down, that's down 98, 99%, if conviction is equal with a different asset that's doing better. Prioritizing different metrics. So a lot of people have, pretty much, I mean, the two metrics that most people are exclusively focused on is price relative to all-time high, but they look at it in the inverse as far as the way that I look at it. And then also their profit and loss on whatever position that they have. And for me, I'm more so just interested in the number of assets that I hold. Like, how many of these assets do I hold, and what is my long-term projection, even if it's conservative, for their price performance? So how can I ballpark this out over the next 5 to 10 years? And how many of these assets do I need to be able to get to the goals that I want to reach? So I'm more interested in the number of assets that I hold, my average, and I also am interested in how far it is down, from its all-time high. But, I look at that in the inverse as most everybody else does. Like most everybody else would say, oh, it's down 98, 99%. Don't touch it. And I would feel the exact opposite as long as fundamentals, everything checked out. And I look at my average relative to all-time high. It's a very important metric I look at. New canisters, new node providers. This is just more so looking at ICP. But again, we had one of the most positive, if not the most positive development happen this week. And there's tons of fear right now. So, I mean, people can talk about adoption all they want to, but I mean, when adoption happens and price doesn't perform, they don't really care about adoption. What they care about is price. That's really just the cold, hard reality. And if people were honest with themselves, that's what they would just openly acknowledge. And in my opinion, this is a brilliant setup. Let's just assume, in my opinion, this market is 100% controlled and manipulated. And now I could be wrong about that. That's just, I've done a lot of research on this, and that's the conclusion that I came to. You could come to a different conclusion. That's fine. But they really set this up brilliantly in that the only people who are going to be in ICP after this is all said and done are the people that have max conviction. period. And I think that this thing is going to get everybody else out. And if you don't have max conviction, that's fine too. Maybe you turn out to be right, big picture. I'm just saying that I do think that they're going to get everybody out of this that does not have max conviction. And then traders, and this is so frustrating, man. So let's just say whatever person, they'll use other people buying alts at a certain levels to invalidate what they're doing, as if everybody's fucking trading. Really, what you're like, so-and-so was bullish at these prices. Okay, really what you're saying is that anybody who dollar cost averages into alts or any other asset, and at some point later down the line, that price drops, then you're wrong. You have a bad strategy. Ignore everything that person says. Essentially, if you don't trade and if you don't try to actually time tops and bottoms, then you're wrong. Okay. I mean, that's the underlying logic that's being used there. And people talk as if everybody's out here trying to fucking time tops and bottoms and everybody's trying to trade. And while probably the majority of people are, a lot of people aren't. And it's just so frustrating, man. It's just really frustrating. I mean, trading and investing are actually very different things. Now, and I know there's a lot of nuance to that for people who just do macro swing trades long term, but trading and investing are very different things. Okay. So yeah, I don't buy, like, a lot of times people will mistake me buying for me thinking the price is about to go up next week or next month. I don't know how many times I have to say it that it doesn't matter to me one way or the other. I will still dollar cost average if I think the most likely option is down, including right now. So, and I've been saying the same shit for over 2 years, man. It's crazy that I still have to reply to some of these comments, man, or that I even still get some of these comments. It's like people don't listen. I told you exactly what I was going to do. And then I did that. And I showed every single thing that I did. So too often people associate someone buying with someone thinking the price is about to go up in the near future. There's many a times people just fucking ignore price and they buy based on fundamentals and they're just averaging in and they're just accumulating. I know that sounds crazy, but there is a decent percentage of people in this space that's all they care about. And then you have everybody else that is just hyper focused on price. So after this is over, evaluate what the right move was. After this all plays out, assuming everything doesn't go to zero, right? Evaluate what the right move was. There's no reason to try to look at what's happening right now and to try to say, okay, this is the right strategy or that's the right strategy. We're not even, we're not even at halftime. If you look at this like a game, we're not at the conclusion of the game. If a coach were to implement a strategy in the first quarter of a game and it looked great and they come out and they take a big lead and they're just knocking it out of the park, but then the opposing coach makes adjustments and the original team that was up big in the first quarter gets blown out, right? You can't make definitive, or you can, but it would probably not be the wisest thing to do, make definitive claims and come to definitive conclusions before something has fully played out. Right? Yeah, bear posting all the time is going to sound and look great. They're going to look like geniuses when we're at literally the depths of a bear market. You might want to wait until this plays all the way out before you start coming to any type of definitive conclusions, because that assumes that these people at these levels or lower are going to flip bullish and buy before price goes up. And that's a pretty big assumption, in my opinion. So let's say ICP topped out at $65 as opposed to $650, and then it went to $3. That is in line with numerous other alts. So that would be a little bit over 95%. And would it not be a scam then? Let's say that only went up to $35 or $30 or whatever it might be, and then pulled all the way back down to $3. Would it not be a scam then because the volatility was less? And back to the original point, you can play on 100-to-1 leverage in this market. They can manipulate prices of assets to the upside and to the downside with crazy volatility because of the leverage trading market, which does not include spot. So would it be less of a scam because the volatility was less? Again, it just the logic being used on a daily basis makes, there is no logic being used. It's just declarations of this is that, or this is going down, bad, shouldn't buy, get out of the market, bad investment. And there's just no logic and reason. There's no nuance. There's no nothing. And the math with dollar cost averaging doesn't change, right? It doesn't change if price goes down, lower. I know that people think that it does, but it doesn't. If this is my average and this is price, if price continues to go down and I continue dollar cost averaging, my average is going to continue to go down proportionately to some degree, depending on downside volatility and depending on how much I actually average in. But my average is going to go down with the price, right? And as long as this asset does not go to zero, right, and as long as that ultimately recovers at some point in time, what's going to happen is, so this is price is going down, my average is going down with it. And then at some point in time, market turns, market starts going back up, and the price crosses my average, and then I'm done. And this is not some new revelation. Like, I've been discussing this for a very long time. And the only way that this doesn't work is if these assets go to zero, or if this particular asset goes to zero. Now, I'm not saying that you should do this. I'm just explaining my reasoning behind what I do personally. Would serious people say price is going down, get out, bad investment, so on? So would serious people just very knee-jerk do that on a regular basis? Or would they say, let's take a more constructive look at this? How far is price down? What's the risk reward here? What do the fundamentals look like? What's the likelihood, given how far it is down, what's the likelihood of price ultimately rebounding? And do the fundamentals and the technology itself, does it support price being higher at some point in time? Right? That's what, if you were trying to have a serious conversation, those are the things that you would talk about. If you were trying to have a very non-serious conversation, you would just continually just point out how price is down or price is going lower, and with no real nothing. And just the only real solution is sell the bottom. I mean, that's really what it comes down to, is people encouraging other people to sell at 98, 95, 99, 99.5% down. And I mean, do whatever you feel like is best for you. I'm just saying that, everybody says to buy low and sell high. Everybody says that in times where it's not mass fear. But when prices get very low, people start advocating for selling low. And that's what happens in the retail space. It's like, buy high, sell low is really supposed to be a meme, but it very much does happen, and people encourage it in this space. And then even crazier, the people who are advocating for buy high, sell low, then criticize the people who are actually buying low. And see, they get to keep, to some degree, some legitimacy and credibility until price pops. But as long as price is low, those people are viewed as like, oh, they figured it out. No, there's two fucking options at any point in time, up or down. And this comes back down to strategy. There's so many things that so many different people say in this space. It's like, if you dollar cost average and hold, you will be wrong. It doesn't matter, right? You're essentially wrong. You picked a strategy and it's wrong. But if you really look at this, even traders will openly say the majority of traders lose. And if you go back, nobody who got into Bitcoin, it doesn't have to be like you got into Bitcoin at $1. You could have just got into Bitcoin under 1,000, or nobody who got into Ethereum under 100. Nobody who did that and dollar cost average and held is in a bad position now. They're all up significantly. But yet there's a lot of people who either tried to swing trade and or traded leverage who lost. But 100% of people who dollar cost average and held with Bitcoin and Ethereum from the early days have been successful. But yet dollar cost averaging and holding, it's like, it's so crazy, man. This space is, oh man, it really is. I'm looking forward to the future. And one more thing, guys. Everything that people say is ultimately derived, in my opinion, from their foundation and their thesis, right? Like my thesis is this is the new internet and financial system. Global adoption process is going to continue until completion. And so everything that I say flows off of that, right? So, but that's really the foundation. That's my thesis. Now, if somebody's thesis is these are risky tech startups, they have limited utility, and the government wants to ban it, then everything they say will flow from that. This is why I always talk about why it's so important to, really assess whether or not somebody is telling the truth about what's happening here, big picture with the implementation process. You can be bearish on the market short term and still tell the truth about what's happening with all this tech and all the institutions that are involved. It just so happens that most of the people that are regularly bearish in this space and pushing bearish sentiment do not tell the truth about any of those examples of adoption. And most of the people shit posting and talking shit about ICP and doing all this other stuff, most of them ignored this, which is convenient for them because they were also talking shit about CKBTC and the Bitcoin integration and downplaying it and making it seem like it was just another wrapped Bitcoin thing like all these other ones. Well, why weren't these other ones adopted in Lugano, one of the only places in the world where Bitcoin is legal tender? Why wasn't Wrap BTC adopted? Why wasn't RIM BTC adopted? Why don't they use Thorchain? Why they decide to use CKBTC, especially considering it's been out. It hasn't even been out for a year, and some of those other products have been out for years. So anyways, those are my thoughts, guys. Make your own decisions, do your own research. I'm going to give everybody notice right now. I'm not changing my strategy. However, I'm not advocating for you to do it. So there should be nobody bitching in my comment sections about anything, right? I mean, you should make your own decision. If your decision is to sell, then do whatever you feel like is best for you. But I could give a fuck less what you think about what I'm doing. I only do that for transparency purposes. 98% of the rest of the people on here don't. They don't show you anything that they're doing. You have no clue what they're actually doing and what they're holding. And so I only show that for transparency. I don't do that to encourage you to do it. Do whatever you feel like is best for you. Okay? That's all I have for this video. Thank you, everyone who has liked, share, and subscribe. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. This was not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. Take care. Have a good day. I'll see you in the next video.